I asked my mom when she said that she picked a school. I asked, "Does Harry Potter go there?" Right?
Is it
Like
Hogwarts?
I thought maybe Hogwarts was real, right? Yes. A lot of people leave Sri Lanka for these student visas and thinking that they can actually study, right? But actually, you have to survive. It's really expensive. It's even more expensive than we used to. You said that it's kind of crazy that, two hardworking people could only afford that. It's even more expensive now. It's like double the price, right?
Yeah.
And, but the wages hasn't gone up, right? So what a student would earn would barely get them through. And how can they like study? She got the opportunity to spend a lot of time with her daughter, now our daughter, which we would have never actually got the time in UK
If you were in
because of that, right? Because of the rat race that we would all, doesn't matter how much money you make, everybody's running all their life, right? And this particular change, I'm sure, has made everything worth it. I know a lot of people will say, no, this is the equal opportunity country, etc., etc. But deep down, there's a bias, and that bias I have seen and I've felt. I've been lucky enough, to actually not be affected by my personal career, but I've seen, like I said, as an example, I've seen other people be affected, other Sri Lankans be affected, right? And
And the situation is
that's
only getting worse, isn't it, Sajith, in the UK?
100%, because there is a real situation in the West, which is they've let in too many immigrants. Obviously, there are two types of immigrants, right? For example, anybody really who wants to invest in Sri Lanka, who wants to open up a company in Sri Lanka, we advise, we consult, and anybody who wants to hire people in Sri Lanka, right? We hire them, we run their payrolls, and basically everything in between.
Hi, Sajith. Welcome to the podcast. You are a Sri Lankan Brit who decided to come back to Sri Lanka. I'm so excited to share and hear your story. Can you please introduce yourself?
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for having me here.
You're welcome.
It's my pleasure being here. And my name is Sajith Caldera, right? I left Sri Lanka when I was about 12 years old, I would say, right? And I lived in UK until last year, about 18 years, right? And now I'm back here. I'm running my own business. I'm here with my whole family, and I'm loving it, actually. When I left in Sri Lanka, when I left Sri Lanka, I was I think about 12 years old. It was around 2005. And thankfully, right, my parents invested in some English lessons, which kind of helped, but it was nowhere near what I actually needed to actually work there. So it was really weird. And my first issue was speaking, like my language issues, right? The communication. Am I going to be able to communicate? Am I going to be able to make friends, etc., etc.? But at the time, right, I was such a big Harry Potter fan, and I remember Harry Potter was like out, and all the movies were coming out. And I remember asking my mom on the phone. My mom first went to UK and and then took us. I asked my mom when she said that she picked a school. I asked, "Does Harry Potter go there?" Right?
Is it
Like
Hogwarts?
I thought maybe Hogwarts was real, right? Yes. So there was a lot of excitement, as well as fear of the unknown, etc. But overall, my experience actually settling in UK it was like a shock, actually, right? Like where I come from, um, Sri Lanka, you have, especially, okay, so as a kid, where you live, your home, right? It's really important.
Yes.
Your home and
Everybody looks like
where
you.
you call home. Exactly. And not only that, right? Everybody looks like me. and also like space you call home, right?
Mm,
Where you grew up. In Sri
mm.
Lanka, you
The
have,
familiarity.
most, right. And most, I'm actually talking about like the environment wise, right? So
Mm,
like most Sri Lankan families, they have, you know, we have to buy land here to build a house, right?
mm.
And you build a house, you usually have like a garden. We lived in the suburbs, you have a lot of space, you have space to run
Outdoorsy.
around,
Mm,
outdoorsy. And also generally the houses, right? My mom and dad worked very hard to actually build the house that they have here as well. Took
mm,
years of grinding to build it, but they built something like solid, right? That means,
mm,
and also spacious, right?
mm,
One of the biggest shocks that I had settling in UK was actually
mm,
the size of the place that you go to live, right? The
mm,
size um, of the house or the rental that we have,
mm,
right? So I went
mm,
from such a big place in UK, Sri Lanka, right? Where,
mm.
you know, it would be considered a mansion. It's not, but it would be
Yeah.
considered a mansion in
Mm,
UK. But I actually went into like a studio apartment with my family of
mm,
four, right?
mm,
And I had to sleep in the living room
mm,
of this very small apartment.
mm,
It was the best my mom could do, bless her. She
mm,
worked very
mm,
hard to get that place. And in fact, she
mm,
actually got it very close to my school. So I'll be in the catchment area as well. And it will
mm,
be easier and safer for me to go back and forth from the school to my house.
mm.
But it was such a tiny little space, right?
Yeah.
And that felt like almost like a cage, actually, right? That
Mm,
freedom that I had and, grew up in Sri Lanka, running around, you got friends, you go, every evening you go out and you play cricket or whatever with friends, and then you come to a place where it's, dark and gloomy, very small places, cramped, everything's new. It was hard. It was hard settling down, but you still have this excitement of, oh wow, like I'm in a new country. I want to see, this new place, blah blah blah, what it has for me. So it was a bit of
mm.
both actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fact that a hardworking couple could only afford that studio apartment itself is insane, right? This is why I'm thinking right now I need to go to Sri Lanka and buy a property because the prices are going up everywhere, not just in the UK,
Right.
right?
It's true.
Um,
It's
so
true.
Sajid, as a young entrepreneur, we will come to your business in detail later on in this episode. You are in Sri Lanka with your family now. I mean, your wife, right?
Yes, I have a little baby too. She's a
Mm.
toddler now, 2 years old, Arya.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here with my wife, and also my dad lives here now.
Mm.
He retired and came back. He had enough of UK a long time ago, actually, long way
Mm,
before me.
mm,
But what they say, apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right?
mm. You
And
followed him.
then, yeah, exactly. So my mom and my sister are still in UK. My
Mm,
sister just finished higher education, so my mom's kind of supporting her with
mm.
her like that stage in life. You know how Sri Lankan parents are. They don't really want to just let somebody go and work it out yourself. They're always trying to
Yes,
help.
they're
So that's
overprotective,
what.
right?
Right. But like sometimes it works because my sister, as a student, like how the story is in UK or wherever you are in the West, right? You go as a
Mm,
student, my sister would have had to do a job, right? To
mm.
support herself. And then
Yes.
to come and, she's very academic, right? She's very smart, a lot smarter than me.
Mm,
She always want to study, right? That's her thing. She's like a little bookworm, right?
mm,
And but the thing is, if my mom isn't there helping her, she would have to
mm,
figure everything out herself. And
true.
this is the reality over there, right? A
Mm,
lot of people leave Sri Lanka for these student visas and
mm,
thinking that they can actually study, right? But
mm.
actually, you have to survive. It's really expensive. It's even more expensive than we used to. You said that it's kind of crazy that, two hardworking people could only afford that. It's even more expensive now. It's like double the price, right?
Yeah.
And, but the wages hasn't gone up, right? So what a student would earn would barely get them through. And how can they like study, with that kind of environment? So my mom's like, no, while I can, I should help her, which is really good, I think.
Yeah, it is good. It is good.
Right.
Sometimes I still feed my son when we are in a hurry with my hands. My husband, who's not a Sri Lankan, laughs at us. He's like, he's a 10-year-old, but I find it like a sweet, warm, motherly gesture towards
Right.
my son, right?
It's
Sajid,
true. It's true.
let's go back a little bit. Before coming to Sri Lanka, deciding that you want to move to Sri Lanka for good, you lived in other countries. Can you talk about that a little bit, please?
Right. So I mainly lived in UK for most of my life. I actually lived in UK more than Sri Lanka, right?
Mm,
But I had contracts, I was working abroad in Dubai, etc. So I was,
mm,
always in and out of UK. And I spent quite a bit of time in UAE, Dubai
mm,
per se.
mm,
Doing work basically. I didn't really get to live. I was actually working most of the time. Every single time I was there,
mm.
like I'll be working straight, not really going out, spending time there. So I
Mm,
wouldn't say
mm,
I lived there, right? It
mhm.
wasn't living there, and I was always
Just
by
visited.
myself. It wasn't with my family.
Mm,
Visiting all the time. I don't know what to call
mm,
that. Like it's semi-living, but not, maybe not living,
mm,
right?
mm,
But
mm,
I've traveled to Europe, like quite a few countries in Europe.
mm,
And I think, that's important, right? One of the reasons, one of the why I actually got to visit those countries is because I left Sri Lanka, to be honest. A lot of people in Sri
mm.
Lanka hasn't left Sri Lanka, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm not from like a special setup, right? Like my
Mm,
mom took the opportunity to go to UK, which gave me opportunities to go and see the rest of the world, right?
mm,
So
mm,
I think it's all linked. I wouldn't have gone and traveled in Europe and seen the
mm.
world if I hadn't actually
Can I
left Sri
interrupt you,
Lanka.
Sajid? Can I interrupt
Right.
you? When you say I left Sri Lanka and then I saw the world, right? Now you mentioned the world, like you've traveled in Europe and you sum it up like I've seen the world. Now, what I'm trying to say is Sri Lankans can backpack to nearby countries like maybe India, Thailand, Vietnam, and then start from there. No? Not necessarily have to save lakhs and lakhs of money. We use this
Yeah,
term
you're right.
lakhs in Sri Lanka
Right,
and
right.
go to Europe. Why always Europe? Why always America? Why
Right.
always Canada? Why don't you just start traveling to the nearby country, whatever is
No, I
cheaper?
think you have a point. You're right.
So
You have a
this
point.
whole
Yeah,
thing of traveling and traveling to these countries, which means like they say musical band is going on a world tour and they only visit Europe. That's not the world.
right,
That's
right,
not
right, right.
only the world.
Yeah,
It's
true.
just one part of the
That's
world,
true.
Yeah,
Right, right,
so
right.
next time I hope
No,
to
I think
hear
you're
from you
right. I
there.
think you're
I
right.
have been
But
to
I don't
South
know
America,
whether I would have.
Africa.
Yeah, I know. I don't know whether I would have actually had the mindset. It's like a mindset actually.
Mm.
Like
Yes,
it
yes.
actually takes a lot to actually get
Mm.
out of your environment or
Yeah.
like see just pass down the road that you live in. I think
Mm.
and actually get out there. If someone has that kind of mentality, I was
Mm.
forced into that situation, right? Like
Yes.
not
Also, it's
forced, but
because it's
I guess
easier for
like
you to travel within Europe. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And also
Mm.
cheaper. And, I
Mm.
had the resources because I had some, opportunities. I
Mm.
don't know whether a normal person in Sri Lanka, right,
Mm.
would have the kind of mindset to be like, oh, I want to go to Thailand, have a look and backpack for a week and see what the world is like, right? I don't
Yeah.
know. We tend to kind of not have that, but
Mm.
maybe we should have that because
We should. We
then
should.
you're right. Exactly. Because that would actually allow us to see the world without having to spend so much money and
Yes.
having to apply for all these visas because actually Sri Lanka
Gets
I think
visa
it's
free
like
to
visa free for
Singapore.
like, right,
Many
right. And
affordable
we don't even
countries,
know the
actually.
countries. We don't even know the countries.
Exactly.
But there's like,
Exactly.
30, 40 countries that's visa free within like a certain area, right?
Mm.
So maybe we should
And
definitely
those
start from there.
countries
Maybe
are as equally beautiful as Europe or America, where the
probably
mainstream
more
market
beautiful,
is,
actually.
yeah, yeah.
Probably more beautiful, actually.
Mm.
You know?
So Sajid, I want to ask you like a question. Like you've been to many countries within Europe and you lived in Dubai. Let's say you visited Dubai many times. Now, what do you see? Something in Sri Lanka we have that you never seen anywhere else. Anything comes up to your mind like this?
Okay. Anywhere else that I visited, I don't think we had like the community, the
Mm,
idea of community. Like, so
mm,
it's to do with culture, right? What I've
mm.
seen, and also how friendly people are. I think it's all cultural,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
So the
Hands down.
culture is very different in Sri Lanka, for sure,
Mm,
right? For example, okay, so I'll just take UK as an example, right?
mm,
If anybody's
mm,
watching from UK, they will definitely relate, especially in
mm,
London. It's like a
mm,
rat race city, okay?
mm, mm,
Everybody's running,
mm,
getting on tubes, getting packed. Tube is an underground, what we call tube is an underground train, right? And
mhm.
everybody gets packed into these little boxes and then they go off to their 9 to 5, right? And they
Looking
think
at
this
their
is life.
phones.
Yes, or like doing something, just ignoring everybody.
Yes.
It's like a culture there. They ignore
Mm,
everybody and
mm,
they're just in their little bubble, right?
mm,
And this took some time to get used to. I am a quite a private person to begin
mm,
with, even for Sri Lankan, right?
mm,
And but it still got a lot of time, it took a lot of time to get used to the idea that nobody ever speaks to anybody
mm,
on public transport or on the
mm.
roads or on the streets, right? And it's really unhealthy because
Yes.
I've heard a lot of horror stories where, if a person is in trouble, nobody's helping. A girl,
Mm,
woman, or somebody, is really hurt or something. Nobody
mm,
really wants to get involved because they're somehow scared or something like that. This is like
mm,
one of the biggest changes I saw growing up
mm,
in Sri Lanka or coming back to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, annoyingly, or for the good or the worse, okay, everybody's very friendly. Everybody wants to talk to you. Everybody
mm,
wants to get on your business, right? Which is, sometimes it's annoying, but sometimes,
mm,
most of the time, it's actually quite positive, right?
mm, mm,
Everybody just smiles, right? Even in the shop, or like if you go to Cargill's, which is one of our supermarkets, or
mm,
Keels or something, right?
mm,
The cashiers, they're smiling and, they're a bit
mm.
slow, okay? They're very slow at doing things. This is another thing, okay? Like it's very slow. Yeah, I think it's just the island vibe. Everybody's chilled out
Mm,
here. But
mm,
the one of the main things is that culturally we're very welcoming and
mm.
very helpful and friendly. That I never saw
Yes.
anywhere, apart from in Asia. Like I went to Bali, and Bali
Mm.
was very similar, right?
Similar. Yes.
Kind of
Yes.
culture, but I did not
Mm.
see that anywhere in the West.
Mm-mm-mm. Yeah. Um, Now I would say that living abroad for many years have changed some of my human qualities,
Right.
like for example, when I first moved out, I had this like Sri Lankan smile everywhere I go. If someone makes eye contact, I smile and they think like, why is she weirdly smiling at me, this
I just,
stranger? Which is not
yeah,
a thing in Sri Lanka. We are like smile and kohomada. Like if we don't verbally
yeah,
say it, at least we are like, we know that it's asking how are
yeah,
you. Hi,
for
acknowledging that
sure,
you're
for
there,
sure.
a fellow human being. This connection,
Yeah.
I miss it so much. So
Right. This is
Sajid,
like the main thing, like that I
yes, yes.
saw in UK. Like the biggest difference, black and white.
Mm, 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 mm. So your wife, I think you mentioned before the meeting that she was born in the UK. She was raised most of her
Right.
time in the UK, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Correct.
how does she find transitioning into a Sri Lankan life now?
Yeah, interesting. So basically, she grew up in a household that was very Sri Lankan actually, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eating Sri Lankan food,
Mm.
talking Sinhalese, but these guys didn't want to talk Sinhalese that much. So they are
Mm.
not very well versed in our language.
Mm.
Um, but they understand Sinhalese, right? My wife understands Sinhalese, like general speaking, she can understand. I wouldn't say she would understand like the formal type in the news or anything, but she understands well. So because of that, it kind of made it easier. And also when they were growing up, they, visited Sri Lanka quite a few times. So they always enjoyed Sri Lanka. So they had a very good, fond memories about Sri Lanka. That made it easier for me to convince my wife, right, that this is the thing we should do. And of course, the beaches help a lot as well. Okay. Just convincing someone to come and, the weather helps, and everything. So now, right now, she's definitely settled in. And I think Sri Lanka has given, I mean, I'm pretty sure you're going to ask me what made you come, and I'm going to answer it fully. But she got the opportunity to spend a lot of time with her daughter, now our daughter, which we would have never actually got the time in UK
if you were in
because of that, right? Because of the rat race that we would all, doesn't matter how much money you make, everybody's running all their life, right? And this particular change, I'm sure, has made everything worth it. I know it has.
That's beautiful. So, Sajid, how did you find living in the UK? Did you have equal opportunities as a Sri Lankan in the UK?
Right, right. Well, I have been fortunate enough to actually be in a situation where, my education. So I graduated as a software engineer, and then I have always kind of been into business. I always wanted to do business. I have done, corporate jobs in my life, and it's been, quite positive for me, myself, right? But I've seen opportunities being taken away from other people who were not from who did not look like them, right? It's actually very interesting story where one of my employees actually didn't let me hire a Sri Lankan employee because I was Sri Lankan. But that person um, actually didn't let me do it um, because because the fact that the hiring manager who was at the time me is the same ethnicity as this person. I didn't even get to interview the person, right? Which was, I thought it was unfair, right? Because they were just like, oh, this person is not going to be suitable. And that was it. And I knew why that person did that, right? A lot of people in UK are very nice, right? They're not, I wouldn't say racist. I don't like to say, oh, people don't get opportunities because they're racist, right? Or because the people who are giving them are racist, because it victimizes. Like you almost come to a victim mindset, right? So I don't like to complain, but it's there. It's definitely there. And they do mostly favor. A lot of people will say, no, this is the equal opportunity country, etc., etc. But deep down, there's a bias, and that bias I have seen and I've felt. I've been lucky enough, to actually not be affected by it in my personal career. But I've seen, like I said, as an example, I've seen other people be affected, other Sri Lankans be affected, right? And
And the situation is
that's
only getting worse, isn't it, Sajid, in the UK?
100% because there is a real situation in the West, which is they've let in too many immigrants. Obviously, there are two types of immigrants. There's immigrants that contribute to a society and pay taxes, however high they are, and work very hard. Most Sri Lankans are like that. Okay. But there are other could be Sri Lankans as well, other types of immigrants who come and try to take from society. And this has become very unsustainable, actually, right? A lot of people, so we still in UK has right and left, right? In, right wing and left wing,
Yeah, I know.
we still have the same. But leftward people are very open to this idea of open borders, etc., etc. But even as an immigrant, I can tell this has caused a lot of issues, security issues, funding issues. For example, NHS, right, is at capacity all the time. That NHS is our national health service. It's a world-renowned service, actually. If you back in the day, probably not now for good reason, but back in the day, this was a revolutionary idea, one of the best free health services, right? And now it's been overrun by immigrants, and it's just not sustainable, right? So, for example, if I wanted to go and get an appointment for example, an ear infection, which is not life-threatening, but very painful, I would have to wait 2 weeks to be seen by a doctor, because they would classify me as a non-crisis or non-life-threatening case, which is true. There are other people who need more help than my silly ear, right? But it's painful, right? So you would have to go and get yourself into the A&E to get help. This is the reality, right? In UK. So there are lots of issues. And because of these issues, people have become anti-immigration. A lot of people have. For example, like every other Western country, actually, like this is a trend. Right wing is basically getting more opportunities to speak about it because the evidence is there. It's happened. And in UK, I think the next election, most likely, this person called Nigel Farage will win,
I know.
who is very anti-immigration, right? You probably heard the stuff that he says, right? Sometimes it's unfair for hardworking Sri Lankans who wants to do things, but the general idea is you're not wanted there.
Yeah.
Simple, right? You're not actually wanted there. So I think this is the same thing that you're saying, and I think the same thing that I've understood. If you're not wanted somewhere,
or
you
appreciated,
go back and you go to a place where you actually appreciate it, right? And actually welcomed with open arms.
and
for
somewhere that
me,
could use your where you could use your expertise to build something your
right.
own,
Yeah,
get
and
closer
then
to your
hopefully they
dreams.
will. Right, exactly. And hopefully, it's like natural habitat, right? Yeah. So you're actually not wanted there. That's the idea that I got, right? And it's my opinion. A lot of people might still feel like they belong there. I know some of my family still does, or my extended family still does, but it's fine. That's how everybody feels, right? But generally, the consensus is that people want their country back or whatever, right? And I think my opinion is that you can keep it, right? And I have my own country, and I'm pretty
I love
sure
how you
that
said that.
exactly. And I think it's probably that I am needed in my country more, right? And
Yeah,
hopefully
yeah.
they will appreciate some of the work that I'm doing here. But it's where you feel wanted and not, it feels like you belong, right?
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
belong in Sri Lanka. I know that, and I feel that. And when the political situation in another country is turning, the wrong way, or it looks like it's bad for immigrants, you don't feel like you belong there. You feel for, especially if you're a father, right? If you're a single person trying to make it, I get it. But when you're trying to put your roots and trying to have a family and, support a family, you want somewhere you feel safe and wanted and accepted. So opportunities there, I'm sure there are, depending on what area of expertise you are looking at your job. But I believe the same opportunities are in Sri Lanka.
I was
If you
going to
look
come
hard,
to that question in this episode, Saj.
right,
In my opinion, I'm going to throw my 50 cents in this, Saj. I feel like I can see this in two different ways. It's going to sound silly, but this is how I think. It would have been nice if Sri Lanka or all the other colonies had a Nigel Farage who
Right.
who passed the message to these people that you are not welcome here either. So please,
Right.
go back. We
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
have
yeah.
them, so we are in this situation. The second thing is, to go from a third world country, as they say, this order they created for us to go to
Mm.
their country, even as a genuine visitor or someone married to someone from that country, it's so damn hard. But if
Yeah.
someone is coming from a boat, it's easier. So I think they also have to sort their rules and regulations a bit, and maybe recognize the genuine people with skills who will come and work
Right.
and pay tax. So I think
Right.
it's
Right. Right.
also within their system. Anyway, let them figure that out. But yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. We really need some young, skilled entrepreneurs like you, people who are coming with so much to offer back to our country, right?
Well, thank you.
So, Sajid, how is it? How do you? I mean, your daughter is still very young; she's a toddler. But
Mhm.
observing other people raising kids, do you think like Sri Lanka is a good place to raise children? I'm asking you this
Um,
because people who migrated, the Sri Lankans who migrated, after having kids there, they have this confusion like, oh, maybe the education won't be as good in Sri Lanka, or maybe blah, blah. So I just want to hear your opinion on this.
okay. It's actually a very good question, but it's a very complex question, right?
Mm, 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 mm,
Because you need to understand the systems here to
mm,
kind of really, really explain it. So since we're kind of addressing this problem as people who left the country, they
mm,
usually have some money to come back, right?
mm,
Some money, some
mm,
way that they have made some money to come back.
mm,
So those people, most of these problems get resolved. Okay, for example, okay, education, right? If you have some money, you don't need to have a lot of money, you can find the same quality education, if not better, actually. I've seen
mm,
like my daughters too. So my wife is actually a teacher, so she's
mm,
very into this. So she has
mm,
looked into all these middle schools, private schools, or whatever, like the
mm,
preschools. And there are very impressive organizations running very good educational centers around
mm,
Colombo and even outside of Colombo, right?
mm, mm,
And as a person, I actually spent 1 year in primary in UK, right?
mm,
And I know what the education, quality of education in UK is like. It's not what they say, okay?
mm,
So
mm,
I've spent close to 7 years in education, like in school in UK, I believe
mm,
6 or 7 years, right?
mm,
I went to Isibatana College, which is a
mm,
government college in Sri Lanka, in Colombo,
mm,
okay?
mm, mm,
And it's a prestigious school, but I wouldn't say it was a school for academically gifted people, but it was
mm,
still, a prestigious. A lot of people from outside of Colombo would wish
mm,
they have a place there.
mm,
Now it's doing really well academically. I'm so proud of
mm,
them, right? They've
mm,
managed to fix the issues that they had.
mm,
But, when I went there, the curriculum was so advanced and hard. Hard is good, I think, but
mm,
the
mm,
things that we were learning was very advanced, right?
mm,
Um, and when I went to UK at first, for the first couple of years, I actually had a head start, right?
mm,
So even the government education here seems
mm.
to be doing kind of better. And this is my opinion, of course. I'm not an
Yeah,
education
no, no,
expert,
no. I
but it's
have
just my
observed that
personal,
too.
my personal experience, right?
Mm, mm,
So it's unlikely that people from outside the country, if they were to settle back in Sri Lanka, that they would put their kids in a government school, unless it's
mm,
one of those big ones, right?
mm, mm,
Like Royal, Annalanda, Ananda, St. Thomas, those got stuff and all the Vishaka stuff like that. It's very
mm,
competitive anyways, very hard to put
mm,
them there.
mm,
You need to have a house or something close by to those
mm,
houses,
mm.
to go to those schools.
Yeah.
But there are lots of options, like the international schools that run in very high standards. Like my sister
Mm,
went when my parents moved back. with my sister
Mm.
for a short amount, like maybe 5 years or something. My
Mm.
sister went to Gateway School. I'm not endorsing any private school here,
Mm.
but the experience that she had was very high quality and nothing compared to the school I went to in UK, right?
Mm.
Um, but it costs some money. You can look into how much this costs. It's definitely cheaper than private education in those countries, definitely
Mm.
in UK, right? So
Mm.
for 1 year of private education in UK, right, would get a kid through here for like 12 years, right? That's how much
True.
the
Same
fees
in
were,
UAE. I can confirm that.
right? So,
Mm.
and it's high quality, right? But the
Yeah.
thing here is that what you suggested was that moms, parents, all these people think that my kid's quality of education is going to be bad simply because it's
Mm.
going to be in Sri Lanka, right?
Mm.
It's not prestigious. Oh, I can't tell people that my kid didn't went to da, 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 da. You know, they just automatically have a negative bias in Sri Lanka, which I think it's unfair, right?
Mm.
You just need to speak to people who went to international schools, good international schools here, right? And they will just tell you, actually, no, it's of very high standards in Sri
Mm.
Lanka.
Mm.
Um, so that's the education part. Then you have the medical part, right? And
Mm.
this is where I see the biggest difference, in my opinion, right?
Mm. Mm.
And a lot of people would disagree, right? And I think this issue is also very politicized about
Mm.
healthcare in Sri Lanka.
Mm. Mm.
Um, okay, so like I said, NHS in UK
Mm.
is just it just cannot deal with the cases it has. I know because my mom is a nurse and was a nurse for multiple number of years.
Mm.
And I know how hard she works, and it was always, understaffed. And now that, a lot of immigrants come from Europe and wherever the hell they're coming
Mm.
from,
Mm.
the system just cannot take that many people.
Mm.
Now, tax-paying people in
Mm.
UK, and
Mm.
UK is a high tax country, right?
Mm.
And the upper band is like 50 something percent, that's crazy. And so so what is tax, right? The tax you pay is basically so that you help the society run itself for security, healthcare, etc., transport, roads, everything, right? So when you pay high tax, you expect a certain service to be provided or a standard of
Mm.
service to be provided. So that is
Mm.
not fulfilled in UK. And I'm pretty
Mm.
sure that's not fulfilled everywhere else in the
Mm.
West as it should.
Mm.
All in systems are very inefficient, I get it. But the amount of taxes I have paid in UK, my mother has paid,
Mm.
my dad has paid, and also my wife has paid.
Mm.
We should be getting a better service.
Mm.
One good time experience I had was that my baby was born there, and we had a very pleasant experience, actually, right? We must
Mm.
say that. Not
Mm.
everything's bad.
Yeah,
Okay,
of
it's not
course.
doom and gloom. Of course
Mm.
not. It was a very good experience.
Mm.
However, whenever I had smaller issues, I've had to
Mm.
struggle so much so that I would just stay at home and it just get better. By the time I get
Mm.
my appointment, it's gone away, right?
Mm.
I remember
Mm.
how much one thing I'll never forget is I had a very like I always had issues in my ear, right? And I had a really painful ear infection in one winter. And I tried to get help from my GP, who's like, the local doctor. You try and call them, you have to call them. Um, 7 o'clock in the morning or 7:30 in the morning, right?
Mhm.
That's when their phone lines open. Okay. So
Mm.
everybody's assigned a doctor in UK.
Mm.
Uh,
Mhm.
and that person basically needs to be booked before you see them. So you have to
Mm.
call as soon as the lines open because everybody's calling every day and you only
Mm.
have a limited number of spaces per day. So once
Mm.
those are filled up, they don't pick up the phone. Okay.
Mm.
They just cut the line and
Naturally heal
nobody can.
yourself.
Right. No, you have to call the next day until you get
Uh,
in, right? So now after COVID, what they've come up with is something called triage, right? This is really sad. Where they offer phone consultation before they even see you so that they can save you even more time, right? So now you have to wait in line until you get in to the receptionist. When the receptionist says, yes, we have some time available, they first offer you the phone consultation. And then if this consultation gets passed or whatever, if this person is really bad, then they decide to get you in or send you to a a hospital close by, right? This is like triaging cases. I do not have to do any of this in Sri Lanka, okay? If my child needs something, if my child is ill, I just go on an app. I can't remember the app. It's a private company anyway, but I think it's run by government as well. Something like, it allows you to book uh, doctor's appointments.
You can also walk
E-channeling.
in or call the hospitals, by the way.
Right. You can do that. You can do that as well. But Sri Lanka has this option. It is amazing because I would never have this option in UK. You would think that Sri Lanka is so far behind with in tech. It is, right? But somehow someone figured out this amazing tool which connects all the private hospitals, right? Private hospitals into this app with all the consultants. So you can search for the type of consultants you want. It's called e-channeling app, right? Might be useful for you in the future. And you go there and you pick the closest hospital that you want to go to. For example, closest children's hospital is something called Nine Wells for me. And you click on there, and then it has all the consultants and their work time and how many slots they have available. Select it, select the time, and then you pay for it, which is a channeling fee, usually about 3,000 rupees, right? Something like that, 2,000, 4,000, I can't remember. You pay it, right? And then you get a confirmation. You just walk in that time, and then they call you and you're inside, right? I think that is amazing. I know some people might not be able to afford that or whatever, right? But if you're talking about expats, that's a luxury that you're not going to find in the UK. And I really appreciate that. I've used that service multiple times. And this is why, so far, thank Lord, that I haven't had any serious issues, all the minor issues like fevers, whatever, things. And I had chikungunya. This is another thing. I'm just actually recovering from it. Those kind of situations, I've always had support. I've always had, medicine, and I've always had consultation from doctors. And all I had to do was make the effort to just go through that process. And that, again, another pro from my experience in the last year for coming to Sri Lanka. And the other thing is security, right? That's a big thing for me anyway, right? And the security wise, I have a small child, so the security wise, I don't have to worry too much because there's always an adult close by. My wife is at home looking after her. And but generally, if you were to take the crime rates and compare it, it's not comparable, right? Maybe because London is a larger city, and larger countries usually generally have, but the percentages and those things, they're not comparable. I actually compared it. Even though I'm coming back home and I felt safe, I always thought that someone's going to ask me this question and that I'm going to be questioned. Oh, it's not safe. It's not this. So I was like, you know what? Let me go and look at the crime stats. And it was not comparable, actually. Like recently, maybe there's some issues in Sri Lanka. Hopefully they'll sort it out. But
this underworld things going on, but not random
yeah,
people jamming the car or going on
right.
stabbing.
No. It's there. I don't think
Yet,
many.
thankfully.
Yeah, I don't think any like uninvolved people were killed, but there has been some shootings. But these shootings happen in London every day. It's like a thing, right? Like this is like a normal thing in London.
Gang
So for
violence, you
me,
mean?
oh yeah, gang violence, it's a normal thing, right? So if you are raising a child and that child is now ready to go out of the house, per se, now it's always something that parents always struggle with, like the safety of your
Their
child.
children.
A really, really big issue. Okay. I don't know anybody else, any other country, but in UK, in London specifically, this is in every mother's mind, specifically, and even more Sri Lankan moms. Okay. And I remember my mom used to be very, very, very scared of me going out after 6. It's not even that that late, but just going after 6, it's always a problem for her. In UK, it gets dark very quickly because of the where it is, right? It's not like here. And in the summertime, it's more light, right? It's dark at 10 o'clock at night, right? But in the wintertime, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's pitch black. Okay. So there, always, and it's wintertime most of the time, no lights, it's usually dark. My parents were always worried. And because of that as well, when I lived in UK, I moved out of London, right? When I wanted to start a family, I was like, no, not in London. Like, no way. I couldn't do it in London because I knew like all the dangers in London. So I don't have that feeling here. Like, I don't have this innate need to always be like protective. I think all parents should be protective of their children, and that's a given. But doesn't need this overprotectiveness in Sri Lanka, in my opinion, right? Bad people are always there everywhere, right? But this society in Sri Lanka is a little bit less violent, in my opinion. And historically, maybe not. We probably had lots of wars, this and that. But generally, the society that I live in and a lot of people live in Sri Lanka is very community driven. They look after each other, and crime and hurting people is always frowned down upon. Like it's never a good thing, and it's not part of our culture. That's the thing, right? It's not part of Sri Lanka. No, nobody really wants to hurt anyone. So I don't have that problem here. So all of these things kind of is a long question, a long answer to your question, but it's like I said, it's a complex question, and all of these kind of things ticks for me in Sri Lanka, right? To raise a family and just be happy and relax. That's the thing, right?
Okay, Sajid, coming back to you moving back to Sri Lanka, right? I want to ask you, as a young entrepreneur, do you feel like young people moving back to Sri Lanka, Sri Lankans, have opportunities in Sri Lanka? Do you see like business opportunities or investment opportunities budding now with the new administration and the change of environment in Sri Lanka?
Okay. So I'll give you an example. So I am in software engineering. I started this business actually remotely before I even moved here. Okay. And that was during the COVID times, I believe. And I got in a situation where I could help co-found or at least build a business in UK, and that business got moved to Dubai, but that business still needed talented workers, and these talented workers I took the opportunity to pitch this idea that, hey, like I can build this team in Sri Lanka, right? I have the experience, it needs, I have the cultural connection. So, it's like a BPO, right? Almost like a technical BPO, right? And I've never done it before, actually. Like I managed teams before, but I never actually put together teams from scratch in another country. And so everything was something that I had to figure out. And that was maybe 4 years ago, right? Then, so there is an opportunity to arbitrage in certain skill sets and labor sections, right? So there's always, of course, Sri Lankans to hire is cheaper than UK or in USA because of living expenses. And because of that, there are multiple opportunities that people who are business minded can do. And some might think, oh, it's exploitation, which I completely disagree because people here see it as opportunities. Okay.
Yes,
So,
yes.
it's opportunities for the country. The country needs, foreign income, dollars, and wherever else that they can get income. And not only that, the country has people that needs to be employed, right? That needs to support their
Skillful people,
families.
actually.
Of course, they're skillful people. That's the thing. Like, we just have a marketing issue, I think. This country has a marketing issue. We haven't
Yes.
had, I still don't think we haven't had. Maybe they're doing lots of good things in the background. I don't want to comment on it politically, but I think it's an image issue. A lot of Sri Lankans have very good English, and they have
Yeah,
very
yeah, yeah.
high literacy rates, right? Very high literacy rates, if not probably one of the highest in South Asia, and very well-rounded people, friendly people for customer service, technical stuff, academically we are pushed to do well since young, so we have a lot of desirable uh, skills and skill sets which we can actually sell to people abroad. And now a lot of these companies, so I was part of a company that was founded in UK, my first corporate job. And I was very grateful to have this opportunity because I got to see how a company was built from scratch because it was a startup. The company was sold to a big company, and I saw the expenses, right? Like, we were very friendly with the CTO and the CEO, and it was very expensive to run that company in Sri Lanka, UK, right? It was like 1 million in GBP to just pay salaries, right? And the same kind of skills and same kind of labor or the skills that was required could have been sourced for like a 1/4 of the price and cut down a lot of these expenses. It's just my experience in tech that there's a lot of opportunities, right? If you know how to apply yourself and find these opportunities, there's always opportunities. Then you have opportunities in the system itself, okay, which I am trying to find and solve, which is I look at everyday Sri Lankan life, everyday people who struggle with certain things or certain technologies that are not present in Sri Lanka. Even though I know you said that we've had like all of these things and technologies here, there's a lot of technologies.
Some.
I speak from UK, right, and London experience. There's a lot of stuff, that's not here yet. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
picking those things and then implementing it yourself, and who can do it fastest, right, and the best, right? So I have so many ideas that I want to do. I just don't have the time, right? And the resources to actually do those things, right? You need it's only one of me. I wish there were other people coming and kind of solving these problems for me, because I am also like all of these ideas that I have, right, of things that I would use myself because these are services maybe I'm used to in UK. Or maybe I want to use, I wish I had this and I wish I had this app. These are things that I would use. So it's not like I want to hoard all these opportunities. These people should just come here and solve these opportunities so I can use these, solve these problems so I can use these, things, services, right? So there's a lot of services. Everywhere I see opportunity because London is an established place. Okay. Again, I speak just for UK. UK is an established place. It's an advanced economy. Economy is doing not that well right now, but as a community, they have established
As a
systems
system, it's well
very well.
established. Yeah.
Very old systems, very established systems, and they have a lot of technologies. It's a financial hub, so innovation happens there all the time, even now. Sri Lanka is easily 20 years behind when it comes to those things, right? And they're catching up fast. I'm not gonna lie, catching up fast. People have got this idea. Unfortunately, these people are not Sri Lankans. It's either Chinese companies or UAE companies and Indian companies coming here and solving these problems, right? Because, they think like that. And they have touched this market and they're touching this market. But we can also, because we have seen, like I said, the world, right? We have used these services. You have to, use these businesses. And the same businesses are needed here for sure. There are markets for pretty much every single product that you can think of, because a lot of people seem to think the Sri Lankan market or the Sri Lankan communities cannot afford certain luxuries or cannot afford certain services, which is not true. I think Sri Lanka is the most fakest poor country I've ever seen. And I've seen some of these cars, I've seen some of these people. There's a certain part of the community that can really afford everything. So that kind of makes markets. Okay. So opportunities are everywhere. It's just how you see these things, right? It's just how you have to change your lens, I think. Right.
Yeah.
And usually if you're an entrepreneurial mind, if you have an entrepreneurial mindset, it's a given. You look at everything as a problem that has to be solved. So people who have that kind of mindset, they automatically think like that. But people who don't kind of had to get into the habit of thinking like that, right? And this is what I think about opportunities in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, imagine other people see opportunities in our country, and our people are sadly trying to leave or hesitant to come back. Anyway, Sajid, what kind of areas you see opportunities in Sri Lanka? Can you name some?
But to begin with, I know there's a very skilled tech community in Sri Lanka. I think that's definitely one. Two is okay, so financial innovation, right? It's also tech, but fintech parts in Sri Lanka is kind of poor, right?
Yeah, very poor.
For example, very poor, very poor. So the online banking systems are very poor and they don't want to innovate. They're like so old. And I know some banks, without naming them, are very trying their best to kind of
Some
solve these
private banks,
problems.
but not the government.
Right, they are doing. Government banks are very, very late. I don't know whether it will get there ever. But some private banks are doing the best. And just last year, I think they rolled out like the best for Sri Lanka, the best online banking system I've seen, right? So I think fintech innovation can definitely drive a lot of stuff, have a lot of opportunities here. There are so many, like for example, we don't have, okay, good example, okay? This is a big idea, but again, I think systems in Sri Lanka hasn't been put in place to have this kind of stuff. So for example, internet connections, right? I think I spoke to you before. Before this meeting. In other countries, usually you have private internet providers providing very competitive services in Sri Lanka. But in Sri Lanka, there's only the government service providers providing these services, which is really, really odd situation to be in because, government's usually not very good at doing business, unfortunately, right? So there's a monopoly in certain things that government has put hold of, but I think those things will change for sure, which opens up huge opportunities, right? It will change because it just cannot be contained and it cannot be, it's not efficient forever, right? So in UK, you have something called BP that basically owns the whole infrastructure of, internet lines, etc., etc. Other providers rent those lines, okay, or lease those lines and provide the service itself, right? Like Virgin, O2, all of those guys, right? Three and stuff like that. So in Sri Lanka, that opportunity is still there, and there's loads of opportunities just like that. For example, some purchases, right, in tickets and those kind of things, they're non-existent or very bad. Like the train tickets, for example, right? In UK, train tickets can be purchased with an app or a website, and it's very organized and very nice. It's very easy to use. But over here, you can still do that, but it's like in the dark ages, right? So I'm always someone who's thinking about it in that kind of stuff. And I mean, I am a father, so I think there can be more advanced and more things to be done in like childcare, I would say, right? Like
Yeah.
I think in Sri Lanka, there's a lot of less things like fun things with like kids to do, right? Or like centers where you can go. I have seen some pop up and I have used them. It's kind of fun. I just think there should be more for like family oriented cafes, and they're coming up. There's a few places in Colombo called Kopi, and there's this Jagro place and all of these cafes, but there should be more things for families and kids, and few families to get together, friends to get together, moms to get together and do stuff, those kind of things. So I'm sure there's other
So tech,
opportunities.
fintech, telecommunication, childcare,
Right.
or
I
family
think
activities.
right. I'm sure there's loads more, and I don't want to
Yeah.
tell everything
I'm just
because I
trying
actually want to do
to
some of those.
take it from your mouth so our viewers can benefit.
I think I'm also like looking into fintech. I know because I am trying to innovate some fintech ideas in Sri Lanka, right? So
That's nice.
I okay, so there's a lot of scams in Sri Lanka. I'll just explain what one of my biggest projects that I'm trying to achieve here, or at least implement here, right? It's a struggle because it's a very hard thing that I'm trying to do. It's like innovating the next level, right? So you probably heard about crypto and the crypto innovation. Someone from Dubai probably know that they're quite ahead of us, right? So Sri Lanka has this idea of protecting your economy by building barriers around the country so that people cannot invest in things and people cannot have the free ability to put their capital in places they want, right? Because of their own issues, their mismanagements, actually. I talk about this very, very forwardly. For example, Aragale, right? This revolution that we just had, what happened is because mismanagement of funds.
Yeah.
Okay. Who did that? Did we do that? No. Okay. It's because a central entity has the power to dictate what they do with their money, how you do it, how you spend it, etc., right? We cannot fix that because that's the government. But there are issues that came up with it. For example, a lot of people lost their value. Their value got cut in half. What I mean is, like, people spend time working. Everybody does, right? And then you have this energy that we have to store, which is the money that we're storing, right? So we have this exchange of labor, okay, and my time. This is really precious because that's what we have. Energy and time is literally our essence, right? I leave my daughter and my wife to come and work, and that's like very valuable for me. But I exchange it for money, right? And this money needs a place to be stored without being destroyed by other people's decisions. Okay. Now, in Sri Lanka, inflation was so high during the COVID times, and I felt it because I invested in Sri Lanka. My investment got just cut in half, right? Like it's completely cut in half, right? So imagine people who are storing money and storing their value in LKR. What happened to them, right? So the real inflation in Sri Lanka was about 120%, right? And that's crazy. It just happened overnight, over like a month, right? The official rates are a lot lower. Of course, they want to show that it's better than it actually is. And I was there at the time. It was a struggle. Like it was hard. The crisis, whew, I've never seen something like that, right? Because I was there because my team was here. working for me, and I just felt bad because they just didn't even have a lot of,
Fuel.
a lot of people come from outside Colombo and they didn't even have food to eat, right? So I had this responsibility to make sure that I provide them with something, some stuff that they need to work. If I'm expecting them to work, then at least I should provide them with the facilities that they can work, right? So I came to Sri Lanka and I saw how everything was going on, right? So this issue increased the prices, living in conditions, the expenses by double, minimum by double, right? So what happens when the price of living got so high, but the wages stay the same, right? This is a huge, huge change. I know people have got used to this because, Sri Lankans are very resilient people, right? We've got used to lot bigger issues, right? And overcame them. And I'm pretty sure this will also be the same. But can you imagine just overnight everything becoming as twice as expensive and you were not to blame for that? You didn't do anything. You followed all the rules. You did the work. You did everything you're supposed to do as a citizen. You
Just wrong
voted, you
political
this.
choices.
You just basically, yes, of course. But it's not like we had choices anyway. Like
Yeah.
it's not like it was divided and people were divided and and they were controlled, right? It's just what it is. Now, I have been in this crypto industry for a long time, and not just crypto. I'm talking about Bitcoin, right? And Bitcoin has um, come as a good store of value for people and for people to long-term store value, I must say, and for people to store their value outside of the system. Okay, a lot of people in the West might not understand it because their inflation is not the same in levels that we have seen here, right? So this is what I'm trying to teach, or I've got a YouTube channel. I'll send you all the details, Lena, so you can share
Yeah,
with
the link is
everybody.
on the description.
Right. I'm trying to educate everything that I've learned. I've dug deep into this rabbit hole. I've been in the industry in Dubai and I've learned what to teach people and what not to teach people. So I'm not trying to say gamble your money. I'm saying to be productive and build with your money and store it in a place that you control. It's a new idea. It's a new concept. This concept I'm trying to teach and also bring a way for them to actually use their money and buy Bitcoin in Sri Lanka, right? There's no way to do this. And all the ways are like scams. Like a lot of people lose money because actually they say the Bitcoin this and Bitcoin that and blah, blah, blah. But actually they are scamming people, right? So it's a huge step in the direction of innovation in fintech. But I see a gap and I'm going to do it. And I'm very close to releasing that product for people to test out. But this is my passion. This is what I do all day, most of the time. And another thing that I work on is basically the I help people set up in Sri Lanka. This is so coincidental that you asked me to come on this channel, but not in a way that I set up and get them to find places to live and whatever. I mean, if anybody wants help, I can tell you how I did it. I can refer you to my real estate agent, I guess. He's a nice guy, but that's not what I mean. I mean, like setting up businesses here, right? So this is not as easy as it's supposed to be, unfortunately. Okay. I did it about 2, 3 times. So I know the process. I have a team that helped me, which I hired, and I help other people set up, right? For example, anybody really who wants to invest in Sri Lanka, who wants to open up a company in Sri Lanka, we advise, we consult, and anybody who wants to hire people in Sri Lanka, right? We hire them, we run their payrolls, and basically everything in between. I'll tell you right now, it's not easy, and this information is not out there. I'm pretty sure the only updated information that's out there is probably from our website. right?
Mm.
Because even the government information, it's not updated or it's out there. So these are like things that should be improved, and improving and solving these problems will basically take my work away, which is fine because actually it's going to help the country a lot better, a lot more,
Mm.
right?
Mm. Mm.
But yeah, I help people invest in Sri Lanka, set up companies in Sri Lanka, and hire people in Sri Lanka. It's called PDMC um, consultancy, right?
Mm. Mm.
So
The link is
these
on the
are
bio.
these are
Now, Sajid, can you
right. Thank you.
elaborate a bit more on how people can contact you and how they can invest, or how to go about it to begin with?
Well, first of all, I don't invest in as in. Can you explain?
With Bitcoins.
Oh, Bitcoin. Okay. Well, if you're not from Sri Lanka, you have hundreds of different ways to
Mm.
buy Bitcoin. Okay. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, we don't have. We have to go through these risky ways called P2P exchanges, right?
Mm.
For example, you have to trust a person who you don't even know, you've never met, to give your money and hoping that they will follow the rules of sending you Bitcoin or sending you USDT. This is called a P2P exchange, and that's the only way someone can invest in Bitcoin in Sri Lanka, unfortunately,
Mm.
right now,
Mm.
until I come up with the solution, right? Because can you imagine you're just meeting someone on the internet and you're just sending that person's bank account money, hoping they're gonna send me Bitcoin?
Mhm.
That's the way that people are actually working. And there's a lot of
Mm.
money being exchanged by this, right? Because
Mm.
people trust using a rating system. In Binance, you maybe heard of Binance. There are
Yeah.
other exchanges called OKX, Bybit. But you know, I am targeting 25 to 44-year-olds, right? 25 to 30-year-olds basically can go to Binance and sort it out, right? I'm
Mm.
pretty sure they know how to do this. They're kind of tech savvy, etc., etc. Because I'm 32, so unfortunately, I don't go in that bracket of 25 to 30 anymore. But I know for a fact that a lot of people don't trust, like with money and stuff. The Sri
Mm.
Lankan culture is that we don't really trust openly because
Mm.
there are so many scammers. We're
Mm.
kind of careful about who we send money and can I trust this person, etc., etc. So I'm
No, I
trying to
would
kind
say
of
we
take away
trusted
this
too much and got scammed a lot. So many people.
scam the
Then
law.
now we dropped.
Right. So, like, especially if you don't understand something like Bitcoin, you've heard there are so many scams around, which is fair
Mm.
enough. That is why it's very hard for me to do what I'm doing because people think
Yeah.
I might be a scammer, but it's what I have to do. I have to grit on and do what I have to do because if you're going to change something serious like this, you have to kind of go with the punches and roll with the
Mm.
punches.
Mm.
So I'm trying to make it easy for people to invest.
Mm.
Literally that. So your
Mm.
question is, how do people invest in Bitcoin in Sri Lanka? Right now, they have to jump through hoops to do it, called P2P.
Mm. Mm.
I'm trying to reduce that friction so people can do it easily. And that's one of the things that I saw in Sri Lanka that needs to be resolved and solved. Just happened to be that I have been in the industry for so long, and it was my calling, I guess, and I feel
Mm.
like that's my purpose now to,
Mm.
I mean, my purpose right now, it's not really my purpose. My purpose is to be like a good husband and a father, actually. But you
Career
still
wise,
need
let's say.
something to do. Right. You still need something to do while you're
Mm.
doing that.
Mm.
And it's all about buying back time, right? Like
Mm.
that's one of the reasons why I moved here. It's like, how can I buy back time by innovating and doing something so that I can have more time later to do what I really love?
Mm.
And I thought that Sri Lanka was going to offer me that, right? And I
Mm.
think it is going to offer me that. It has offered me that. Right now, I'm working really hard. So
Mm.
there's no time that I should be spending more time with family. I know that. The idea is that I work hard now and then so that I can spend all the time in the world with family, right?
Mm.
As long as I
Mm.
live.
Mm-mm.
That's another
But
thing.
I'm sure your work-life
Um,
balance is much better than in the UK now that you're in
oh
Sri Lanka.
yeah, for sure. Like,
Sajid, can you tell us
um,
like what should be the minimum if someone is thinking to uh, invest in Bitcoin through you?
okay, so
I'm just
minimum
trying to
is like
simplify this for my viewers.
for sure. So minimum could be as 5,000 rupees, as
Mm.
as low as 5,000 rupees, right? But it's actually not through me. It's the app that I create that you
Yeah, yeah.
control. This is very different to everything. You
Mm,
control your money. Completely up to you what you do with your money. Whether you want to send it out to somebody else or keep it with you, you have all custody of your money, which is very different to most of the solutions out there in the world, not just here, right?
mm,
Now, Bitcoin is very different. A lot of people don't like this idea. Some people like this idea, but one day they will have to understand this idea. This is my idea, right? This is the future.
mm, mm, mm.
So,
No, we cannot
my
eliminate the
suggestion,
interest overall because I've seen whenever I try to watch a video related to Bitcoin, including yours, I see people are interested, especially young people of Sri Lanka. So I'm sure.
right? So, I think when it comes to Bitcoin, my answer to you when it comes to investment is that invest what you can,
Mm,
not jump in and invest everything that you have, everything that you have to eat. That is not the way. A lot of young
yeah.
people, they come to me and they
Mm,
tell me, I took loans out. Like, these are real stories. Ever since I started my YouTube channel trying to educate people and reach out to the community and
mm,
teach them, they've come to me and they wanted to talk to me and they like to tell me what they should be doing. And some of these questions that I get
mm,
I went to this trading guy and they told me to buy some coins and I bought them and now they're half their value. What do I do? I
mm,
said, okay, uh, what do you do? I make like 1 lakh a month. This is literally someone said 1 lakh a month. So, okay,
mm,
how much money did you invest? Actually, like, it's not my money. I took a loan out for like 20 lakhs.
mm,
And now the investment is doing really bad. So
mm,
this is like really bad investment advice that they followed,
mm,
blindly followed because of these experts, right?
mm,
and and they're suffering. The guy said that he has to look after his kids, sorry, not his kids, his parents. He's struggling, and I said, look, you need to learn about these things before you invest. So
mm,
the best advice I can give you is just learn with me. I'll teach you about
mm,
Bitcoin and how you should invest, right? So other people
mm,
also emailed me saying that they've lost lots of money investing more than they should. And I basically teach this, right? You pick an amount, you don't overcomplicate this. Every month, you put that money away in Bitcoin. If you want to save in Bitcoin and invoice in Bitcoin, it's called the dollar cost averaging method. It's a very famous method in stock market as well.
mm,
And you basically pick a frequency called weekly or monthly or
mm,
bi-weekly, and you pick a very small amount, right? Or whatever amount that you're comfortable with, right? Could be 10,000. And you keep doing it on that day. That's it. It's simple as that. Because when you start learning about Bitcoin, it really doesn't really matter about the price that you buy, because this thing is gonna keep going up in price, really. But the real value is not just going up in price. It's something that you control, the only asset that you control, okay, that you can keep out of the system that is losing value every day through
mm,
something called inflation, right?
mm,
So I'm trying to teach that. I'm trying to, get people into this idea. It's a mission, it's an uphill battle, but
mm,
I feel like, that's my calling basically. And I always wanted to help people in a way, but I didn't really understand how to help and make it into a business or something.
mm,
I could
mm,
always run a software engineering company and then give people jobs, and that is impactful, that's true. But I wanted to make a larger impact in Sri
mm,
Lanka. and I saw Sri Lanka. These things actually happened by, you might think, oh, he planned this and he did this. And no, it's just happened by chance. And one thing leads to another, and now I'm in Sri Lanka. And then I see these gaps. My knowledge seems to match what's required to fix this issue. All it takes is actually the courage to do it,
This is
And if you
exactly
have
what I
this,
want for Sri Lankans abroad to think, that I can fill so many gaps if I go with my skills, right? So Sajid, you have a beautiful channel where you explain everything in detail. Guys, I have no knowledge of Bitcoin, so I might not be asking the right question. So please visit Sajid's YouTube channel. You will learn so much. And how can people find you or contact you, Sajid?
you can find me on YouTube, Bitcoin Sri Lanka. Follow me. If you want to learn in Sinhalese about Bitcoin from the beginning, and also soon I want to do this in Tamil as well. On LinkedIn, you can search me and anytime message me for anything that you need, whether, let it be registering businesses, how to do business in Sri Lanka. If you have any issues, maybe I can help, or just say hi. You can just search Sajith Caldera on LinkedIn and reach out.
Yeah. Because guys, don't forget, he has so many business ideas. Either you can learn something from him or collaborate with him. We never know, right, Sajid?
Yes, I mean, look, I guess my message to everybody is that Sri Lanka does need builders for sure, right? Like we don't need people who are talking about building. This is gonna sound very harsh, but I always felt like this, and I'm gonna say it. What we don't want is people who comment about problems in Sri Lanka or from outside of Sri Lanka, right? You go to these meetups or you go somewhere to see somebody, our families, our communities, and I see a lot of people outside of the country, and they're talking about, oh, I would do this, so I do this, I would do it like this, and I would do it like this. But they're all talking about all of this stuff, problems in Sri Lanka from outside the Sri Lanka, right? We don't really need bystanders and talkers. We actually need builders to come and do stuff here, right? There's a lot of stuff to be done, right? Just come back if you can help this country, and most of you, I know you can, and build. That's what we need. We need builders.
Well,
That's my message.
it is also pointing towards me, but I would say we didn't have a perfect situation before, I know. But now, guys, feels like something is really positive. The tides are changing for the better. So if you can, if you're able, I think this is the right time to give back to Sri Lanka, right, Sajid? Thank you so
I
much
absolutely
for
agree.
spending your
Thank
time
you.
with me. Yeah, because we need to finish the episode, but I'm hoping to bring you down on my Sinhalese channel, which I'm gonna link down here too, and hopefully see you there with another video, Sajid. Thank you so much.
For sure. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.